Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, October 30th, 2022. Coming at you live from the Hockey Night in New York studios on Long Island. Another great show coming up for you tonight. Ethan Sears of New York Post will be joining us to talk about all things Isles. With me tonight is Mr. Chris Botta. My name is Sean Cuthbert. Chris, how we doing?
I'm doing great. It was a fantastic week in Islanders country. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to be joined by the Islander fans. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening as always.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome to the show, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in. And before we get started, I want to remind you all that we are very proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, the new location 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. Also happy to be sponsored by RJ Daniels American Bar and Grill, located at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center. The best place to catch the game when you can't be at the game. And of course, last but not least, Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Don't forget, if you're tuning in live, get your questions in for Questions Brewing, presented by Lost Farmer. So, Chris, last week, things weren't going so well in Islander country. It's starting to get a little doom and gloom around the fan base. And lo and behold, 3 games later, 3-game winning streak against some formidable opponents. What do you see, CB?
Well, I feel like we probably should have done the show with braces on for the whiplash that we have from the last week. I wouldn't say doom and gloom, but certainly concern that really emanated with the Jersey game because it was such a walloping.
Yeah.
I still hear from fans, even last night after the great win against Colorado, I heard from fans saying how bored they were, how they wanted a refund, how it made them feel like, wow, what are we looking at for this season? Is this what this team is?
Right.
Hey, you cannot say enough for Lane Lambert and the adjustments he and his coaches made, the players, the changes to the roster, just everything about it, just fantastic. Amazing to think 3 losses come back with 3 wins. And then against Colorado, you had the play within the play because they got down 3-0.
Right.
And it looked like if they had lost that game, not the end of the world, but then to come back the way they did, awesome stuff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And not just a winning streak against, anybody in the league, but you're talking about 3 of the top teams here. You're talking about the Rangers, the Canes, and, of course, the Stanley Cup champion Avalanche. So a big statement for this team after the losing streak. They go down to Florida. They lose those 2 back-to-back. And now you're looking at some hope here. You're above 500. You get off the schneid a little bit. You have a road trip coming up now against some beatable teams. Maybe not the competition that they had previously, but it's still going to be tough. Anytime we go on the road, it's going to be tough. But, is this team finally hitting its stride? Are we starting to see what the Lane Lambert New York Islanders might be looking like?
I feel like it's a little early to say that. Listen, all that said, questions were answered in these last 3 games. They did what they had to against the Rangers. Rangers playing on the second end of back-to-back. Islanders at home. We thought that was a game that the Islanders would win and should win.
Right.
And they took care of it. And Sorokin does what he does, and we'll be talking about it. Well, we'll be talking about him all season. The win in Carolina was really impressive. I think there was some of it was rallying around Joshua Bailey's 1,000th game. Just a real great spirit around that game. I think that was one that was set up to, could that be another Jersey thing? Could Carolina, really do the run and gun thing on them? How many times, I don't know about you, I have this experience where I'll go to check the NHL scores on the NHL app, and the Carolina game will be early second period, and Carolina's out shooting the other team like 27-6.
Right.
Whether they're at home, whether they're on the road, I can't blame the scorekeepers or anything like that. So this is good. I don't think we're ready to say anything yet. The fans will tell you, we hear this a lot, that U.S. Thanksgiving, late November, gives you a pretty good idea.
Imaginary cutoff.
Yeah, I used to say for years, back in the point blank days, that a lot of the Islander teams I worked for, we were out of it by U.S. Thanksgiving. That's not going to be.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, I was saying, that's not what's going to be the case now. But we could sit here a week from now with these 3 road games. Like you said, it would be pretty deflating if they do less than 1-1-1, right? I mean, the bar should be higher than that, but it's possible that they come under that. So this will be, I would like to think we're not going to have too many back-to-back episodes where it's 3 losses and, oh, my God, and then 3 losses and 3 wins. Yeah.
500 hockey's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, we could have done a show in the early second period last night and then come back and done another one.
Absolutely.
So, a little early, but a good sign. Lane Lambert said in the post game last night, you were probably driving home or hanging out in the parking lot or whatever your post game routine is. We could talk about that some other time.
Sure, yeah.
He said in the post game he volunteered. He doesn't volunteer a lot, but he said, "Look, we made some adjustments after the New Jersey game to address some shortcomings." And I said the word shortcomings. He didn't. I think it was his way of saying, "Okay, maybe we can't always run and gun depending on who we're playing with." I don't think, Rich Goring on the broadcast, he didn't point out anything that they're doing differently. I haven't heard any other analysts say anything they did it so drastically, but I'll give Lane the benefit of the doubt. I appreciate him bringing it up. And it's an acknowledgement that maybe there are some days, some opponents, we can't always play the same way. So a really, really good sign, Sean.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you can't ask for anything more with 3 wins against those teams. And it's nice to see some positivity in the fan base now. And to have a comeback win like that against the Avalanche is just huge, especially being the Stanley Cup champions. But, of course, you mentioned Josh Bailey's 1,000th game. Why don't we focus on that a little bit? Just what an achievement, not only in itself to get to 1,000, but in the same uniform on Long Island with the New York Islanders. You see that happening, and how does that make you feel?
It's a wonderful feeling. He is a terrific person, as everybody knows. I don't even, I get all the analysis there about the points, the goals, all that. He has earned, talked about this with Darius just briefly. You walk into that locker room and your jersey is hanging up at, let's say, for a 7 o'clock game, maybe like around 5:30. He's walked into that Islanders locker room. He's walked into an NHL locker room 1,000 times. Yeah. And the coach of the team, contract society, you don't get to play if you're not good. And, he's got to do this. He's gotten to do this 1,000 times. And now also to do it for this team this entire time, be a good player. It's a great thing to see. And, here's to many more for Josh.
No doubt. And it's just been something watching him come into this league. And I always thought that, he came in a little too early. But you go back to his rookie year, and, they were just desperate for guys to put on the ice. And I think it was a disservice to him as a player. And he ends up taking a lot of slack for that, coming in probably a little too soon, didn't get to marinate down in the AHL. And, it was a little, it took him a little time to find his stride as an NHL player. He didn't start hitting 40, 50 points until deeper into his career. And obviously the frustration from fans is well documented over the course of that time. So to see him hit his stride and become an important player for this team and, seeing him finally get into the playoffs with this team and what a playoff performer he's been. I think he's the only player in the post-Cup dynasty to have 50 points in the playoffs, which is something to be said as well. So a great career for him, and it's still ongoing. He's put up a couple of points in these last couple of games here, so he's a huge part of this team. And one thing I definitely noticed with his teammates and former teammates that they said, and I mentioned this on Twitter, is that they always point to the character of this guy. It's not just what he's done on the ice, but, Matt Martin saying he's going to be a part of his life for the rest of his life. He's a great friend. He's a good man. So to hear that, I think, speaks even more volumes than just hitting 1,000 games.
You hit on it. A clutch player, really great in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Certainly had some, good moments on bad teams. He was rushed. That is not his fault. His development was hurt. That is not his fault.
Right.
He's continued to always rise above. He's never once gotten caught, which would be natural, maybe getting emotional, talking about fan response. Or
always even keel.
Always even keeled. I trust he stays off social media, or he doesn't care. And he is we haven't. And I'll include myself in that. In this has maybe not always been as classy as he has been throughout. The other thing I thought about is We had a bunch of guys, the Islanders, play their 1,000th game when I was there. A lot of times guys who rolled through toward the end of their careers.
Sure, right,
I think of like Keith. I remember Keith Acton, one of his first games, I think, with us, Eric Kornick or somebody, was his 1,000th game. And we, the league comes and they do the silver stick. They do the honor thing, and we put him on the cover of that night's program. And Keith, he always looked a little older than he was, but these guys, often they're 40 or they're in the late 30s,
right?
And their kids come on the ice and they're 15 years old,
right?
But Josh with his young family and still looking young, still with whether it's with the Islanders or somebody else, somebody's going to be playing in this league at least a few more years.
No question.
He's not near the end of his career.
Absolutely.
So congratulations to him and everybody involved with his drafting and his coaching and his family and everybody else.
And you mentioned those silver sticks. Are those provided by the teams that they're playing for? Or is that provided by the league?
It's a league thing.
Oh, it is. So the Islanders haven't given out an unfair amount of silver sticks compared to the rest of the league.
The league comes in. It used to be Jim Gregory for the longest time who would come. I don't know, Bill Daly. By the way, was there, I missed it, was there a presentation last night?
There was.
Okay.
There was. They did. They honored him last night. Same thing, brought the family out, everything. So it was great to see. And one last question on Josh before we break for Ethan. There's some talk now because of the tenure that Josh Bailey has had with the New York Islanders. Okay, you know what I'm going to ask. And I think we've talked about this on a past episode.
And I don't mean no in a bad way.
Of course not, because I agree with you on this.
This is why the question is, it sounds like Jeopardy, should his number be retired?
Yes.
And, okay, I wanted to say, you never want to be that person. We all have better things to do than to be the schmo who says things like, he doesn't deserve to be, or we decide, right?
Right.
And I also will recognize that with teams across sports, that honor seems, my Yankees, it seems like everybody's getting a monument, everybody's getting a plaque, everybody's getting their number retired.
Right.
The reason for a team Hall of Fame, or to go back to doing an Islanders Hall of Fame would be, Josh Bailey, the year or two after he retires. That's a night. Have the family here, and you honor him for that. A number retirement?
Yeah.
No, he's just not in that category.
He's not. The bar is, especially with the Islanders, is very high. And it just, for me, it doesn't seem right. As good a guy as he is, as good a player he's been, he's just not at that level.
Win the cup this year and next year. And
then maybe have a talk.
Yeah.
Win a Conn Smythe? Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
It's really not a debate. If you have a team Hall of Fame, he deserves to be honored. He deserves all the good things that are said to him. He deserves to be back and to be one of the loudest cheers when he comes back 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Agreed.
A number retired. Come on.
I'm with you, Chris.
Okay.
All right, folks, want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And, of course, your favorite podcast providers. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Ethan Sears of the New York Post will be joining us.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Nikki, where should I go to watch the Islander game? Dad, where should Fran go to watch the Islander game?
Just tell her to go to R.J. Daniels.
Love the Isles? Go to R.J. Daniels and enjoy your favorite hockey team with their big screen TVs and in-game sound. R.J. Daniels also provides indoor and outdoor dining, catering, a vibrant late-night bar scene, and weekly live entertainment. Need great planials? Go to R.J. Daniels. Call or visit online at rjdaniels.com.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train does roll on right here on Hockey Night in New York. And joining us right now from the New York Post is the great Ethan Sears. Ethan, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Ethan, last week, Chris and I were talking about a rough 3-game losing streak for the New York Islanders. Now, all of a sudden, they've rattled off wins against the Rangers, the Canes, and the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. What changed from last week to this week, where the Islanders all of a sudden are riding high on these 3 wins?
Well, I think first and foremost, there's some more comfort with the system, with what Lane Lambert is running. And that's really been important here. Obviously new coach, it's going to just take some time to get used to that. And, there still might be some growing pains as we continue on here. But I think these last 3 games, you've really seen them start to embrace that style. And it's really shown up in just how they've countered the speed of these teams. You think of the Rangers, you think of Colorado, and those are some of the fastest teams in the league,
right?
And that's something the Islanders were not particularly good at dealing with last year. And this time around, even last night when they were down 3-0 to Colorado, it was not the kind of they were not getting dominated by any stretch. They were kind of even on shots pretty much the whole way, and they never really looked overwhelmed by the speed. They seemed like they were in it. They were able to skate with them, and that's something that has really been notable to me during this streak, and even in some of the games before that.
Yeah, Ethan, I think that's a great point you bring up, is just the fact that, I was going into these games, especially against the Canes and Avs, and just like worrying about how much pace the Islanders are going to have against those kind of teams, because we've seen in the past, especially with the Canes, they seem to have the Islanders number all the time, and for them to kind of not only, hold the line with them, but also obviously, carry play and end up winning these games. But it was very, very encouraging to see. And I guess you look at this whole comparison that obviously people are just going to be talking about all year, Trotz versus Lambert and all that. But you see the fact that they're able to keep up with the speed. Do you think that's, somewhat of the personnel, obviously getting younger on the back end? And do you think the system has a lot to do with that too, just with how Lane has them playing the game?
I think it's a little bit of both. Obviously, it helps to replace Zdeno Chara and Andy
Right.
Green with Alexander Romanov and Sebastian Aho, right? But at the same time, what Lane has stressed is, they want to be more aggressive. They want to get up harder on the forecheck. They're bringing their demon down on the walls to pinch harder, and they're doing more to kind of make it harder to get through the neutral zone and make it harder for these teams to break out, which is where they really use their speed. So I think it's a little bit of both there.
Gotcha. And obviously the Islanders also made a surprising move earlier in the week, waiving Kiefer Bellows. Anything to that? I think a lot of fans were kind of caught off guard. I myself was. I didn't think that was going to be coming anytime soon. Is that just something maybe where the team wasn't happy with this play and they said, look, we got to make room for a 7th defenseman?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to say exactly what the logic was. Obviously, they're not particularly given to explaining these kinds of things, and it was surprising to me as well. But we had seen kind of Kiefer Bellows fall out of favor a little bit early on in the season, and just logically, it didn't make sense that they were going to keep carrying six defensemen, especially with this road trip coming. And you look at the last weekend in Florida, Soshnikov gets in the lineup, Ross Johnston gets in the lineup, Kiefer Bellows doesn't. So,
Right.
That kind of gave you a little snapshot of probably what the team's thinking was. And, Lane Lambert didn't exactly explain it when we asked him about it. He said Kiefer hadn't done anything wrong, or, whatever it was exactly that he said. But obviously, they thought that Soshnikov and Johnston, the 2 other guys who probably would have been expected to go on waivers, had more to offer.
Ethan, it's Chris Botta. Thanks for coming on, and also really appreciate your coverage. It's nice to see you on the beat, and you're on the road in Florida last weekend, so thank you for that. Let's take us a little bit inside the beat now that we've continued to emerge from the pandemic and things have opened up, and I know it's not everything Zoom anymore. How's it been for you covering the team?
Hey, Chris, good to hear from you. Yeah, things have been much, much better this year in that regard. The locker rooms are back open, which is great for us as beat writers. I'm sure you've seen there's just much more variation in all of our stories between, me and Andrew Gross and Kevin and Stefan, and they all do a great job. It helps us a ton to be able to develop relationships with these guys, to be able to have conversations that are a little bit more informal, where you're not just sort of at a podium and all in a group talking to one person and kind of getting stuck having to write the same story. It's all around, it's much better. That access it's really important to what we do. And I know it sounds self-serving, but I hope that people who read it can see that, and can see that, hopefully the stories reflect it.
Oh, it makes all the difference in the world. And then also, not really, don't need a comparison to Barry. We know what he was like, but what's it been like? We see the post games with Lane, but maybe the day-to-day, the after practice scrums, has it been like working with Lane Lambert?
Yeah, I mean, Lane is, he's perfectly, polite and fine to deal with. He's not one who's going to give us that much as far as, what the lineup is or who's starting in goal or things like that. He's held all of that very close to his chest so far, which, I'm sure is something that the general manager is pretty happy with him about. But he's been perfectly polite, perfectly affable, and from that standpoint, there's nothing to complain with.
And you wrote a really great in-depth profile on Lou Lamoriello for Post Plus. Was there one of two things I'll ask you, either your biggest takeaway from doing that, or perhaps something that that landed on the cutting room floor that didn't make the story that you would share?
Let me think. Biggest takeaway was probably just this. My favorite part of the story was talking to the guys who Luke coached at Providence when he was younger. Because you talk to a lot of the people who work with him at the Devils, and you hear a lot of the same things. And obviously, those are people who have been asked about Lou before. They've probably been asked a lot of the questions that I'm asking them, and the stories are going to be kind of similar, right? The guys at Providence haven't been quite as much, and some of the stuff you hear from there, like his first game weekend at Providence, he made his team it was Thanksgiving weekend, so all the students are off campus, right? And he basically sequestered them in a dorm, said curfew is 9 p.m. or whatever time it was. And then to make sure nobody left, he sat in a beach chair outside in the hallway and then made sure nobody left. And that's where he slept for 3 nights. So it kind of just makes you, makes you appreciate like that he is the person that, like, he has been this person for pretty much forever. Like, he is just been this intense competitive guy who is tuned out, every distraction and everything in his life for, basically 50 plus years. As far as something on the cutting room floor, there was one story that I liked, and I won't name the team or the any specifics, but there was one of the former assistants I talked to said, was talking about how the environment with the Devils was so professional, and and I said, well, what's a good example of that? And he said, well, I went and interviewed with another team and was actually offered an assistant coaching position with this team, and when he came for, I don't remember whether it was his first or second interview, but he was basically turned off because the general manager showed up in shorts and a t-shirt and sunglasses and flip-flops, and having worked for Lou, who obviously buttoned down, everyone's got to come dressed nice. He basically walked in the building and was like, what is going on here? So that just shows you kind of the standard that Lou has had, maybe compared to some of the other, I guess some of the other, people who have been in the league over the years.
Wow, great stuff, Ethan. And two-part question here for you. We're 9 games into the season now, so we've kind of seen a tale of two teams, right? In the early going, a little bit of the struggle. You had the 3-game losing streak. Look a lot better against these top teams in the league, 3-game winning streak. Which team do you think we're going to see more of for the rest of the season? Is this still kind of a book to be written here, or do you think this is a team who's settling into a little bit of a stride and maybe we're finally starting to see exactly who this team is? And just the second part to that is, has anybody on this team, maybe outside of the stars, that stood out for you in these 9 games that are going to maybe help this team along the season?
Yeah, well, for the first part of your question, I'm going to hedge a little bit and say I think that we're going to see both versions of this team as we go forward. I think that, this is probably still a group that's pretty far off being, top 3, top 2 team in the Eastern Conference, but it's also pretty clearly a much better group than they had last year. And that probably leads you to being something like, they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. And there's going to be stretches like this where they prove they can play with the Carolinas and the Rangers and the Colorados of the world. And there's probably going to be some stretches like we saw last week where, they're getting kind of crushed at home by the Devils. And we're asking questions about, are we really sure that it's realistic for this team to do that much? And that's probably the kind of reality of this group right now. And maybe that changes a little bit at the trade deadline. But at least for now, that's, I think, kind of what we're going to see. As far as guys who we've seen more from, I mean, you kind of have to put Casey Cizikas in that category, right? That the penalty kill has been 29 for 30. He's been a huge part of that. And the fourth line has been probably their most consistent line after a year where they really struggled last year and they looked to have lost a step. And all 3 of them have been playing well. Clutterbuck and Martin too. They all deserve credit, but Cizikas has really been driving the play there. And I don't think you can understate what he's done, both at even strength and on the penalty kill.
Yeah, no doubt. Great points there. The fourth line looks like they took they found some of that youth, the fountain of youth, and look a little younger than they have recently, right? And one guy,
they do.
Yeah, and one guy I wanted to key in on is Sebastian Aho. Probably expected to be the 7th defenseman. He wrestles away the 6th spot from Robin Salo, at least in the early going here. What do you like out of him so far, and you think that's a spot he can hold on to?
Yeah, I mean, as Lane has kind of talked about, Aho's a guy who can really contribute offensively. He skates well. We've seen him get some power play minutes, although, it's been Ryan Pulak on that second unit for the last, I think, 2 games here. But he can get up on the rush. He can contribute offensively. That's something that Lane likes to see from his defensemen. I would imagine that at some point, we'll see Robin Salo again. I don't know that either of them is going to necessarily have a lock on that spot.
Right.
Obviously, in the past, we've seen that Aho is prone to kind of lapses in concentration, I guess is the right way to put it. On
Great
defense.
way to put it, yep.
Well put. You should be a writer.
Thank you. But, that hasn't really been something we've seen from him so far this year. And if it's something that he's taken out of his game, then, yeah, of course he can stay in the lineup because he does contribute in a meaningful way offensively. Yeah,
I agree with you. And you know what? Their partner, Scott Mayfield's having a little year so far, too. 3 goals. I mean, didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, it's been an impressive year. Obviously last night getting in on the back door with on the pass from Barzal, and he's someone who has, like we've talked about, gotten up on the rush and taken pretty well to what Lane has been telling the guys. And the results have been there, 3 goals. I think he had 3 goals all of last year, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So he's already equaled that total. And he's probably, I think, 2 or 3 off his career high. And you would figure that he'll pass that pretty early on if he keeps at this pace.
Yeah, and he picked the right time because it's a contract year. So hopefully we see some more of Scott Mayfield. But Ethan, fantastic stuff tonight. Really appreciate you joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and hope to have you on soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much for having me.
You got to take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ethan Sears of the New York Post. Great stuff from him. Excellent questions. Getting a little behind the scenes on the Lou story. That was pretty cool.
years ago, not too long. It was probably one of Lou's last years with the Devils, maybe the last 1 or 2 years with the Devils. Knew him a little bit. Actually, only about a year before that, I interviewed Lou Lamoriello on a Broadway stage and in front of Broadway Theater. Goes, that's a story for another time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if you ever have me back here.
We'll think about it. We'll consider it.
I was covering a Rangers-Devils game. And after the game, I did my locker rooms, I did my interviews, and I'm used to going a certain way back to the Garden elevator, back up to the press box to write. And I'm not really looking. Maybe I'm looking down at my notes or my phone, like a lot of dumb moments that people have. And all of a sudden, I'm in this hallway, and I just hear, Chris, and I hear like a trainer go, Chris, and I'm standing in the middle of the Devils. So I guess they had a road trip. Maybe they were flying out after that game.
Yeah.
So Lou, the Devils, they arranged their post-game meal right at the Garden, which isn't uncommon, but the locker rooms maybe were too small or whatever, and they set it up almost like picnic tables in this hallway, which was closed off, but I didn't know it was closed off, and I walked through. And it gives you, and I felt so bad. And honestly, I could have done that to the Islanders or the Rangers or anybody else, but it does kind of give you the specter of Lou that I disappointed him and I walked through this area.
Didn't sleep for days.
So much so I called the PR director the next morning. I was like, please send my apologies. I mean, so that's one of my Lou stories.
Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff.
He's organized, and that's what Ethan was getting at, this thing with the coaches sleeping in the hallway. That's what made me think about it. He has always been like this. It's not like it's emerged in the last 20 years.
Sure. Interesting stuff. Well, before we dive a little bit more into these games, I just wanted to get your take on the Bellows move, just because we covered it with Ethan. I know you tweeted about it a little bit. This was something you kind of saw coming yourself?
What we talked about on the show, and thank you for giving me like a little credit for calling it, was just simply, if somebody's not going to be playing for you, and you want him playing, it goes back to hanging up the uniform and Josh earning that uniform 1,000 times. It means something. And if this guy is going to be playing for you, in this case, Kiefer Bellows, then you try to send them down and you give that roster spot to somebody else who you think is better. And what we did say on this show just a week ago was that if you have to do that to somebody who has to clear waivers, not everybody's waiver eligible, but he had to clear waivers. If you send them down, and if he gets picked up, so be it. Because nobody is so valuable to the fans who might say, well, maybe you could have got a 4th round pick.
That's something Lou would have tried to do before waiving him, right? See if there's any interest around the league.
Yeah, and one other dictum that I will leave you with, and I'll probably say this maybe 5 times by the end of the year because I repeat myself a lot. No disrespect to Kiefer Bellows. I think we know what he is. I think he's got an opportunity at the Flyers. Now, when all those players come back from the Flyers, unless Kiefer really steps it up, he's going to have to go back down again and clear. There'll be he might move around a little bit, or maybe he proves himself. But when you make a trade, when you send somebody through waivers, the only team that really knows that player well is the team making the move with that player. Now, I know the easy answer is, well, then why did Milbury trade this guy, that guy? But my point is, the Islanders know, they've now seen enough of Kiefer when they made that decision, and they knew what the consequences could be. So you do that, and you move on, and you wish him well, and that's it.
Yeah, and look, he only got, I think, 7 minutes in the first game of the season, and then he was out of the lineup after that. So it looks like they've seen enough, and it kind of forced their hand in a bit too, just because they needed that 7th defenseman. You can't go on the road with 6D. Every
player who's kind of on the fringe like that, there's always like some knock, right? And I let me say, not a scout, not an analyst, the thing on Bellows that I heard from his draft year was just missing a little giddy up. That's like the one thing, and some variation of that. Not literally everybody's used the word giddy up, okay?
Right.
But that there was just a little missing a little bit of a spark, missing, a little short on the speed end, are dedicated, committed, talented, shot, offense, conscientious, all those things, but just missing a little bit of that jump. Hockey guys will say it's quickness. The quickness is different than speed, right? Just missing a little bit of that quickness. Maybe he gets that step. Maybe Tortorella is the guy for him. I imagine Tortorella is going to ride him. He's going to get every chance in these next couple of weeks. He could be in the transaction page, pretty soon.
Right. I think that's a good opportunity for him with a team like Philadelphia. So we'll see what happens. And
good luck.
Yeah, and you see some groans from some of the fans saying, "Oh, Ross Johnson keeps a spot over him, and Soshnikov keeps a spot over him."
I get it.
Right. We all do, but obviously
you pick your spots with the guys who are average or worse.
Right.
Right? Like, this isn't like, I'd be concerned about Salo because there is still that high end talent there.
Yeah.
For this argument, and believe me, on Twitter and everywhere else, including me, I'm as guilty as the next person of making a bigger deal about something. It's not a big deal. You wish him well. That's it. That's all.
It's not a big deal.
He was. If anything was a mistake or is a big deal, is that he was drafted in the first round.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that with the Islanders, unfortunately.
That's where the error is, that's where it didn't work out.
Yeah, if anything, it's just another one of those in a long line of guys that they've drafted in the first round that just haven't panned out for one reason or another. Win some, lose some.
By all accounts, a terrific kid. Lineage in the NHL with his dad, Brian, famous interaction with Brian Trottier. And you just wish him well. And you know what? He could wind up on the Islanders again because they know what he is.
Yeah.
They know he's a good dude. They know he fits their system to a certain extent. So if he bounces around a little bit, which is possible,
sure, you never know,
he could wind up back here.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So let's look at this Ranger game a little bit. 3-0 shutout win. They play a little survival mode in the first period. The Rangers kind of took it to them, and then they weathered the storm, and Ilya Sorokin, 41 save shutout, absolutely outstanding. Huge win. Kyle Palmieri gets 2 goals. Josh Bailey gets a goal. Nice to see Palmieri pocket a couple, not wait until the second half of the season here. So I look at this as a huge win for the team because you were looking at either, 2-5 or 2-3. Both look very, very different, and I don't want to be over dramatic about a win this early in the season, but it could have been a tiny turning point for this team to get a big win like that against the Rangers at home, going into these other big games against the Canes and then against the Avalanche.
It was an early must-win. If you remember, before the Ranger game, Bailey had been scratched. Beauvillier had been scratched.
Right.
And there's probably tape of me somewhere saying Palmieri could be next. And he got 2 goals in the next game. So he's not going to be next.
He won't.
And and that's the whole idea. When you scratch players, it's not just for the ones you're scratching, but just also a reminder to anybody, especially who's used to playing on a top 2 line most of their career, especially somebody who's making $5 million on a multi-year deal, that it could be anyone. And so I believe the message was delivered. And then the other piece of this, another thing that we did say, is the thing about Beauvillier is every time he's scratched, he's going to be really good the next couple of games.
Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
He has been. He's been fantastic.
He seems like one of those guys that does need a kick in the pants every now and then to get going, and hopefully one of these days he just finds that consistency where he doesn't need to have a lesson, in order to kind of pick up his play.
I wouldn't be surprised if a McLean, a Huda, perhaps even a Lane Lambert said, don't make us go through this anymore. Right? Don't make let's not have to do that, because they lost the game. He was scratched, all right? And let's not have to do that. Why don't you just play every darn game like it's your last game? And I think sometimes it's just focus. I don't think there's a lack of a commitment there.
No, he plays hard. He plays hard. It just seems like he loses his way every now and then, and he hits those slumps, unfortunately, and it hurts the team because he's a guy they have to rely on. He's one of their younger guys.
Definitely.
Yeah. So instead of the Islanders getting their 4th straight loss, the New York Rangers did. So, good stuff in Islander country. Moving on to Friday night in Carolina, I was prepping for a big loss, I'll be honest with you. Especially, you talk about the Ranger letdown, right? You come off a win over the Rangers and you're expecting to lose the next one. Going to Carolina, and you couldn't write it any better. Josh Bailey scores the game winner in his 1,000th game, and it was a great goal, too. What a move that he made, the patience that he showed to put it in the backhand. So, fantastic there. And Sorokin, again, he was even better. He got the shutout against the Rangers, but he was even better against the Canes. He was outstanding, even though he let a couple in.
That's the thing about this team, and that's why, to the people who said they would be in the playoff race, even after with the 3 bad losses, he is the equalizer here. Like, he's a goalie unlike they have had. Lundqvist, saved the Rangers for a long time. Like, he kept them competitive. So does Shesterkin. and very few teams have players like this. The Islanders have this.
Yeah.
With Sorokin. They're, he might give up the occasional flighty goal.
Sure.
But you accept it because he keeps you in games. It just
yes.
That's a big difference there. It's what makes last year, pretty troubling as to what happened, even for all the things that derailed it. But this is a player just entering his prime, if he's even there yet, and he is superstar. There's a couple of different meanings to the word. I'm not saying Ilya Sorokin could walk down the street of Manhattan or Los Angeles where I'd be recognized.
Right.
But in this sport, in terms of what he means, he's just, if he's not there yet, he's on the verge of being a superstar. And when you look at this team, what he does for him, his value is just absolutely incredible. It just so happens we have two of these goalies playing 20 miles apart. That's a cool thing.
It is.
But we're glad we got one of them.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. So you have the great outing from Sorokin. Brock Nelson sneaks in 2 goals just before the end of October. Everybody talking about Brocktober. Oliver Wahlstrom with a beautiful 2-on-1 goal with Matt Barzal with that newly formed line with Bailey, Barzal, and Wahlstrom. So that's looking good so far. Matt Martin gets a great goal. Ethan Sears talking about the 4th line. They really have looked great so far this year. I hope, fingers crossed, they stay healthy because we have joked about the fact that it's really tough to have that team staying healthy for long stretches of time.
Cizikas has, been great.
Yes.
He's another guy who you're going to have a Hall of Fame night for him, and you're going to do it for Matt Martin too. Many years down the road, but he's a glue player. He'll talk about giddy up. He's got it.
Oh yeah,
and he makes a difference most nights. I mean, every once in a while somebody will throw up a stat, well-meaning about how he hasn't had a goal in 11 games, and
it's not his job.
Yeah, and I just I get it. It's magnified when the others aren't.
Right.
But this guy has been a special Islander now for a long time. Really, all 3 of them have.
He essentially took over as my favorite player on the team after Franz Nielsen. Big Cizikas fan. He's like the Energizer Bunny. Like you said, every game he gives it his all, and that's why you see guys like that on that line in and out of the lineup, because they literally, you use the cliche all the time, sacrificing the body, but they really are, and just crashing bodies like they are every night, game in, game out. It takes a toll, but they get out there and they do it every night, and they do it well.
In one of I think it was the last year, one of the final years of the Coliseum before they went back to the Coliseum. You know what? The era, so pre-Barclays Coliseum.
Yes.
I invited a close friend of mine who I work with in PR. Mm-hmm. He's from Ottawa. He's a big hockey guy, but he lived in New York. And I said, you got to come to me to one of these games at the Coliseum. And then to give him the full Long Island experience, we went to the Marriott bar after. And you're going to wonder where am I going with this.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
And we're there with our beers, and the place is packed. Good win. Teams had a good win.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those little things you always remember. Casey Cizikas came walking in to have his drink or appetizers or whatever, and the place just went nuts.
Really?
It was like, how you'd like to think it was when Joe DiMaggio walked into Toots Shores 70 years ago, whatever, 60 years ago. And what made it special for me was because I had this friend here who I wanted him to see, that doesn't go on in a lot of markets. What happened at the Coliseum and kind of this small town feel and the emotion from the fans, that's something that you don't see in a lot of places. So I'll always, my friend just said to me, he's like, that was really bleeping cool to see this guy just walk in and the place go nuts.
Absolutely. The guy's always got a smile on his face, even when he's playing on the ice, and he's always the first guy to give the big hug to the goalie after a win and everything like that. So he seems like a very good, positive, good guy to have on the team. So hopefully he keeps up the play because he's playing great. Absolutely. So let me ask you this to tie up this winning streak here and focus on this Avalanche game real quick, the big comeback. Now, is that something – we talk about this new style with Lane Lambert. They're playing more up-tempo. They're getting more offense from the defense. Is that a comeback after being down 3-0 in the second period, right? They battle back. They score 5 straight goals. Could a Barry Trotz team have done that with their defensive style?
Well, you'd have to check the math to see how many
Look back in the schedule.
How many times they ever did. Now, even in Barry Trotz's defensive style, he's going to take the gloves off a little bit, take the the restraints off a little bit when you're trying to come back.
Right.
What Lane Lambert said after the game last night was that he liked, and I know coaches say this a lot, but he said, I didn't mind how we were playing.
Okay.
And it wasn't a surprise because my concern going into the Colorado game was that the Islanders the night before had got 6 goals, and Colorado got shut out to New Jersey.
Right.
So it's like, you're a Yankee fan, and they're playing the Red Sox the next night, and the Red Sox got shut out in Fenway to Cleveland, right? Like, you're feeling like this is a talented team that's due to bust out. So they did bust out, and it was right after you tweeted, after this first period, I'm still feeling pretty good. I sent you a text.
Yes, you did.
And then an hour later, how do you like me now? Because they came back. So, could Barry Trotz? Yeah, I guess they have the ability. To buy your question and your theory is to buy into this thing that the Islanders are becoming a lot more run and gun, and I don't know if I see that yet.
Okay, I think that's fair.
What do you think?
Well, the reason why I raised the question was because it's just, look, the Islanders coming back down 3-0 against the Colorado Avalanche in itself is like, yeah, really? Because, look, everybody was ready to walk out the building, at least spiritually at that point, right, when it was 3-0. And for them to do that, you get back-to-back goals 17 seconds apart from Bowen Mayfield. And it made me wonder, just because of how much offense they've been getting from the defense. We talk about the fact that Mayfield has 3 goals already. Noah Dobson's been scoring 2. They're all putting up points. And I just wonder if Barry Trotz's style would have allowed this team to come back in a game like that against a team like the Colorado Avalanche. And look, I've been one to sing Barry Trotz's praises ever since he came to the team. So I'm certainly not putting his team down or anything like that. But I do wonder if this system kind of allowed the Islanders to mount that comeback because of the way they play under Lane Lambert.
I think it did. So, yes.
There you have it.
You won me over just like that.
Rock and roll. That's why we do it.
It gives them the confidence to be able to do that. I think that helped. Once they got the first one, then it goes from there. Remember the game? So I want to say it was in Barclays, and they had all those. They scored like 4 times on the power play
against Detroit.
Yes. Franz?
Yeah, he was involved.
Ledecky owned the team because they kept on showing him in the press box, bumping his fist.
Yes.
He might have been there. But that's just too long ago to qualify. Plus, they were like on a 5-on-3, I think, for a while.
Well, we got a comment from the chat. MJ Beckman mentions they did go from down 5-1 to 5-4 last year against Colorado, which is fair. There you go. 3-goal comeback, but they did not come back and win.
Eric Kornick said it was the first one in a long time.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Hey, it's fun to talk about.
He said it more specifically. He didn't say it was the first one in a long time.
Fair enough.
We'll have to look it up.
Fair enough. All right, so there you go. So, look, that's another huge win, confidence booster, and hopefully just this 3-game streak here, just they can ride this wave now going into this next set of road games. They're going on a little bit of a road trip now, which is perfect timing for...
And now, it's time for What's on Tap. Brought to you by RJ Daniels, American Bar and Grill.
That's right, folks. So the New York Islanders embark on a little Midwestern swing Tuesday into Chicago, Thursday into St. Louis, and then Saturday into Detroit with, I would say, a better Detroit Red Wings team. They're looking pretty dangerous this year, at least a little more dangerous.
Yeah, probably a little better earlier than I thought. I think a few weeks ago, I did some show with you and took a little shot. Like, can we really believe in Detroit because they signed 4 average players? The first day of free agency. Those guys are, some of them are, including David Perron, a little bit better than average. So, look, we've now seen from the last 2 weeks. I'm not here to say it doesn't matter if they struggle on this trip. I don't expect that they will, but. We are in week at a time mode. It just so happens we do this show this way once a week.
Kind of perfect.
But this is week at a time mode. I don't know if there's a lot of analysis to bring here. Chicago, I mean, they've looked good at times under Luke Richardson, but buried deep in there, they have the ability to really stink still. Like they got. I agree. So it's going to be on the Islanders to battle, and get that stink out of them. That's. I don't think anybody in Chicago really believes in Chicago not being so bad yet. and it's going to be up to the Islanders to knock that out of them. So we shall see. St. Louis, they're always going to be good.
Yeah.
I know they've had some struggles. They had a wacky loss this weekend. And then Detroit, sooner or later, we can overrate people at times, and everybody's just thinking that Steve Yzerman has all the answers.
Right.
And he wound up not having them as quickly at Detroit as people just figured. Eventually they thought within 2 or 3 years they were going to be really, really good, and they haven't. And they may not still be there yet, but they do have some pieces, part of it from not being good and having early draft picks, making good draft picks, Sider, of course. So it's a fascinating one game at a time trip to see what each of these teams are like. But the Islanders will tell you, if we play our game, we'll be all right. And I will say, if they play the game they played in the last week, they'll be all right.
If anything else, they've proven they can hang with just about anybody in the league with the wins that they just rattled off.
It's only been the Jersey game that's bad, and we did say,
I agree with you.
The woe is us and the slump shoulders, all that was all about the Jersey game. I don't think anybody was picking apart that Florida and Tampa game. They didn't win. You got to win. That's
right.
The object,
They made some mistakes.
Right? Yeah, but it was the one. Yeah. Now, how many signature wins do they have? You could say, well, these last two. I don't really count the Ranger game. The Ranger game, they actually think they had to do it. They did what they had to do. Because I don't think the Rangers are that good, or at least they weren't when they met them, and it was back-to-backs. But you would say that they have at least 2 signature wins this season, and they only have 1 signature dumpster.
I think that's fair, and I would say the Carolina game is their best game so far. That was their best effort. As impressive as the comeback was against Colorado, I think the one against Carolina was their most complete game. They got ahead, they clamped it down, they got the win.
It was. What I usually say for games like that is I just wouldn't have. Not that I wouldn't have bet on against the Islanders. I just wouldn't have bet that game.
I think that's fair.
So
I think that's fair.
Did I see 6-2 final? I did.
Right.
I did not see that.
Right.
No.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, folks, we're going to take one more quick break, then we're going to get into the Hero of the Week. We'll do some questions brewing, then we're going to wrap this thing up. So I want to thank you guys all once again for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. We'll be right back.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia, while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, that means it's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the White Whale, featuring chicken cutlet, gravy, onion rings, bacon, mozzarella on a toasted garlic hero. Get it half price all week, starting tomorrow. That's right, Monday. All through the week, we'll announce a brand new half-off hero. Stop on in to the Huntington location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the White Whale. So who knows, maybe we're dropping a little hint with that sandwich, maybe not. But Chris, why don't you do the honors here and let everybody know who your hero of the week is?
That could be many, but for
Sure.
me, and I'm going to say this a lot, until things change, it's Ilya Sorokin. He makes this possible for the Islanders. Again, this could change where they're a little tighter on defense, where they figure out their system a little more. But knowing he's back there, the Colorado, different. You get Varlamov.
Yes.
But it's just having two good goalies. By the way, Lane Lambert was very complimentary of Varlamov.
Had a great game.
Yeah. And sometimes you have those games where you can give up 4 goals and your goalie is still a big, big part of that. So
Yeah.
Sorokin is to me, he's almost like he's the hero. He's like the heavyweight champ.
Sure.
You got to knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the way this team is made up is a lot of talent. By the way, again, weekly credit to Barzal.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful play to Mayfield doing the thing. So
yes,
the folks who and I did during the 3 losses. You start hearing a little Barzal stuff. They're not pleased. It's just stop. Like I don't. Come on. This is a incredibly talented, incredibly dedicated player who's doing everything he can. It's up to the coaches to rein him in. It's up to the coaches to figure out the line mates. He needs help. But this is the Hero of the Week segment, and I always go sideways on it. It's Ilya Sorokin. And by the way, spoiler alert, he's going to start 2 of the next 3 games on the road. So when we come back, there's a chance he's going to be Hero of the Week.
I have a feeling he's going to get this honor a lot. And same for me, Ilya Sorokin. He played absolutely fantastic in the 2 games this week. So big ups to the goaltender. May he continue to play the way he's playing, because he's going to be a big reason the Islanders make the playoffs if they indeed do. So there you have it, folks. Your Hero of the Week, Ilya Sorokin. Remember, you can stop into the Huntington Blue Line Deli and Bagels location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the White Whale. So with that out of the way, why don't we get in some questions here before we wrap it up? It's time.
It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company.
There you have it, folks. It is time for Questions Brewing. So let's get to it. T-Boyle13, always active in the chat. Questions Brewing. Speaking of the goaltenders, this is an interesting one. We'll entertain it. When do you see Skarich as Sorokin's backup? I mean, what is his trajectory right now? I guess he's getting a little better there. He's playing in the A. They're winning some games down there, but I honestly don't know if that's going to be anytime soon. I wouldn't be surprised if the Islanders extended Varlamov past this year and gives him a backup contract, to be honest with you.
Oh, Varlamov is going to have options, though, to sign elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, but his development is on track, and the thing to know about these goalie coaches that, yes, Barry Trotz brought with him, but these goalie coaches know what they're doing. So you feel like things are in good hands there.
Right.
Lane Lambert as well. So his development is coming along nicely, so he could be an Islander someday. But that's one. Had an exchange with a fan yesterday, like, we should put our faith in the people who paid to make these decisions. Well, no, this is what fans. We could do this with all of our teams, right? But I think when it comes to goaltending, there's reason to have faith in the people making these decisions. So he'll be here when he's ready. As for Varlamov, sure, that's possible. They love him. They love that the security of having both of them. But it is possible that unless they can get him on a little bit of a discount, right, he could sign somewhere else for a lot more money.
No, that's perfectly reasonable. I think in a perfect world, though, if it works out for the Islanders, that's something they'd be looking to do is to keep Varley on to kind of be Sorokin's buddy. But we'll worry about that another time. Worry about that when it comes.
By the way, I think that Varlamov played against Colorado instead of Carolina. I think a bonus from that is for Colorado to see him.
Sure.
And I know he didn't stand on his head, but he was good enough. He was better.
That's a good point.
He was better than the other guy.
Yeah.
So I think
the season goes in the tank and they get to the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
All right, fair enough. All right, question from Mike C4652Co. Question brewing. Seeing how he is doing out in Colorado, did Lou miss the mark not signing Rodriguez? I suppose, but did we know? You need a little foresight to see that coming? I don't know.
The knock on Rodriguez was that even though his offensive stats last year were good, in the second half with Pittsburgh, they were like non-existent. So he wound up going – every other team passed on him for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, it took a long time.
And what often happens is one of the better teams then gets that guy because then they say, hey, you come here. You might not be getting every dollar somebody told you were going to get on July 1 or when free agency started. Evan Rodriguez isn't that special a player for me to say missed the boat on. But listen, they didn't sign anybody. So, we could be doing that question once a week and saying, hey, but how about this guy, that guy? Yeah, he would be an upgrade. He's an NHL player. They've already lost Bellows, but I'm not gonna kill him for it.
Yeah, and this is kind of a similar question. I just want to acknowledge it at least. Trotty19 asked, with Pavilion and Bailey sitting out games, why couldn't Lou have lost one of them for Rodriguez or to brink it over the summer? I mean, Easier said than done.
Well, the Brinket's in a different category.
Yeah, I mean that's a deal that's very difficult to pull off, and as we discussed before, I mean these sitting those guys is more of a message than anything else. Not that they're giving up on those guys. Next question is from Joey Pickles 30. Question, Bruin. Do you think Aho has? We discussed this with Ethan. Do you think Aho has solidified the 6D man role, or will they move back to Salo? I think they're going to let Aho run with it until they want to until they think he needs a seat. You know, he's been playing pretty well. I don't think they're in any rush to get Salo in there, so let Aho do his thing. And if he has a bad game, sure, swap him out.
I have absolutely nothing to add to that.
Okay.
Ethan had it right. You have it right. Got nothing to add. The Islanders like Aho.
They do. They keep him around. Every time I think he's taken off and maybe trying to get a better opportunity somewhere else, they keep him around. He sticks.
The team that has the player knows the player better than anyone. They like Aho.
All right, last one. I like this one from CGS878. Question, Bruin. Who will be promoted from Bridgeport when the inevitable injury or flu bug hits the team? You don't like this one.
Well, because every time there's that thing about who's going to go down this is like the reverse of that.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to take this one?
I'm going to roll the dice. And look, if we're talking forward, I'm going to say Ratu before Dufour. I think they're both doing all right down there. I don't think they're listen, I haven't been watching the games. I haven't been looking at the stats in Bridgeport. I see the headlines coming every once in a while on Twitter and social media and stuff like that. But I would assume Ratu maybe gets the call on the forward end of things. And then I believe Balduke's doing all right down there. So maybe on the D side of things, after Salo, maybe he'd be the first guy to get the call.
It depends where the need is.
Right.
This is not the draft where you take the best player available. In this case, if you're looking for a top 6, then maybe it is Ratu. If you're looking for somebody else, more of a grinder, it's not going to be them because you don't want them in that role. I get it. Maybe some people will move up, but it's a hypothetical, and I don't know if there's a clear-cut candidate. If you're talking about a forward, I don't think it's not necessarily Ratu or Dufour. It's probably not Dufour. It's Ratu or somebody else.
I think we're on the same page here, Chris. Well, that's going to do it for Questions Brewing, everybody. Really appreciate you getting your questions in. And that's also going to do it for the show. So, want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. Huge thanks to Ethan Sears of New York Post giving us a great spot here. And, of course, a huge thanks to Chris Botta for sitting in once again on Hockey Night in New York.
Thank you, Sean. And I think it's okay to say that I think we could have some special things coming up in the next week or two that fans can keep an eye on. It's not just a matter of waiting for Sunday to come some weeks.
That's right. Keep your eyes out on social media. We got some special stuff coming up this week. We'll have it up there during the week. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with that out of the way, folks, big thanks to Blue Line Deli and Bagels for sponsoring the show, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Of course, their brand new location in East Islip, and UBS Arena, an official partner of the New York Islanders and the greatest deli around. Big thanks to RJ Daniels American Bar and Grill, located at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center. The best place to catch the game when you can't make it to the game. Remember, they have live music, comedy nights, trivia, a late night bar scene. They have it all. And a huge thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check out lostfarmerbrewing.com to check out all their great selections. And hit up that tap room. It's fantastic. They got some great selections over there. And, of course, the Stable Shaker American Lager. You can follow Chris Botta at Chris Botta NHL on Twitter. You can follow myself at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow Christian Arnold at C_Arnold01. You can follow the show at Hockey Night NY at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you enjoy yourself, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. Thanks a lot. We've been Hockey Night in New York. For Chris Botta, I'm Sean Cuthbert. Have a great rest of your night.